Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Revit Pure Live. I am Nicolas Catellier, an architect, BIM manager, educator, and founder of the website revitpure.com. I am live here in Quebec City, Canada, and I'm really excited about today's show. Revit Pure Live is a show where we help you become a better Revit user. Sometimes the show is all by myself, like today. Sometimes guests come to the show to share their expertise, so make sure to check the previous episode of Revit Pure Live to see what guests we had on so far. As always, use the chat to ask any question you might have. Next week on March 31st, there won't be an episode of Revit Pure Live. However, I'll be joining CG Architect for a webinar about Enscape. It will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on March 31st. I don't think there's a link available at the moment, but when the registration open up, I'll let you guys know. And the show will be all about creating a smooth transition between your Revit model and Enscape. Something else, tomorrow, Thursday, March 25th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on the BIM After Dark live stream with the Revit Kid, aka Jeffrey. I'm not sure what the topic is, but I think it's going to be some sort of Q&A with other guests. He calls it the All-Stars episode. Just type in Revit Kid on YouTube and you'll find the link. So let me share the screen here. You can see, just type Revit Kid. It should be one of the first links you find on YouTube. Okay, what else do I have for you? Oh yeah, if you like these live stream sessions, a great way to support Revit Pure is to purchase a Revit Pure learning package. In addition to supporting the work we do here, you'll obviously support yourself on your quest to become a great Revit user. Let me show you a brief showcase. The first learning package is called Basics. It is made for beginners, although there are some medium to advanced topics out there for intermediate users. For example, we do talk about some advanced tools like phases, what I'll be talking about today. Some of it is part of the basics package, as well as schedules, work sets, groups, model in place, families, design options. So check it out at revitpure.com/basics. And we also have a design learning package that is made to help Revit to seduce your clients. Basically, this is a package to break the myth that Revit is a bad presentation tool. Learn how to make presentation plan like this, create beautiful planting families, create perspective. We have some modify entourage families, learn how to create section perspective, rendering, and even virtual reality to use with your clients. So hop on to revitpure.com/design. All right, that's enough for now. So let's jump into today's topic. So while you guys are in the chat, I'm always curious to know where you guys are from, so you can type it in. I like seeing where the readers are in the word. And all right. And for today's show about phases, you can go to this link that I've just created, which is revitpure.com/live. And here you can download the show notes. It's basically a PDF, it's a PDF, but it's kind of a PowerPoint style with some text and images. And basically everything I'll be talking about today, you can find it here. And let me jump back into Revit Pure Live. And there's also a pamphlet. A pamphlet is a seasonal publication that we publish 4 times a year about a specific Revit topic. This one is about phases. Just given your name and email address, you will get this template as well as the other pamphlets when they're released. So a lot of answers. Somebody in Honolulu, Philadelphia, England, Boise, Idaho, Brazil, Quebec, Italy, South Jersey, Tijuana, Hawaii, Texas, Atlanta, LA, Florence, Brooklyn, Ottawa, Cape Town, Madrid, Pennsylvania, Boise. Isn't that amazing? So thanks everybody. And let's jump right into the topic. Oh yeah, I had this PDF open. This is the basics package I've been mentioning earlier on, and I spent a lot of time setting up this ebook PDF. It's made to be really simple. You know, sometimes books, there's just about Revit, there's just a lot of text and not that many images. Well, with this basics publication, I try to put as many images as I can. If you have read some of the pamphlets, that the exact same style, but for the complete Revit tutorial. So make sure to check it out. Always done with that. Okay, so let's get started with phases. I'll go through the... So for those wondering, is this going to be kind of a beginner session about phases, intermediate, advanced? Well, I'm going to start with the very basics, but you know, I'll try to not spend too much time on the really basic facts so I can jump into the really interesting stuff. But still, we'll go through the very basic information about phases. The first one is that I would say in most projects, in most renovation projects at least, you would have only two phases, a phase called existing and a phase called new. And at first, for the first thing that I need to say in this session, and let me show you something else. If I go to Twitter, when I posted about this session, one of the first comment I had, please tell me the episode starts with demolition is not a phase. So there you go, demolition is not a phase. And it's such a famous sentence when it comes to Revit and phases that there's actually a t-shirt. Demo is not a phase. Thanks, Purvy, for that. And the reason is that it's useless to create a demolition phase. It's a common mistake for Revit user to, in addition to existing and new, to create a phase with just demolition, but that's not how you should do it. So we'll see what is the best practice. So that would be for a basic project in Revit, create existing and new, that's it. When you have multiple phases though, that's when you can start to use multiple numerical values like this, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, with a description on the right side like this. So let me jump into Revit. So this is, by the way, this is the basics template you can get at, on my website that I always start on the show. So this is the phasing menu, which we can find on the Manage tab. And you can see here we have existing and new. But obviously you can insert phases like here. I'm just going to press after. And I could call this, so let's say existing to be phase 1, phase 2, phase... And instead of new, I'll call it phase 3. And in the description, you could enter, you know, what part of it. Like, let's say if you have a sequence of construction. You could do it this way. There you go. Although to be honest, I don't use Revit phases in that way very often because it's not that convenient. And yeah, make sure that the first phase, like imagine the phases are a timeline. The first phase in time is up, like where it's written past, and the future is at the bottom. Okay, as I mentioned, usually in most projects you would have two phases, existing and new. And let's have a look at the elements here. I'm going to switch this element from existing to new. Due to the phase filter, it doesn't seem to change much of anything at the moment. But basically, all elements in Revit can be, you can switch them a phase. Just select them and you'll see phase created and phase demolished. I'll select this one again. I'll be switching to existing. And when it comes to demolition, there's a couple ways you can demolish elements. There's indeed the small hammer tool you can use, but the best way usually is just to have a look at the properties over here and switch phase demolish. You'd usually use new, just like this. And now I'll get warning for the room is not enclosed, which is not a big deal. So we set our wall to demolition, and now we need to have a look at the properties of this view. This view, you can see the phasing is set to new, which and that's why the wall is gone. So if I switch it back to existing, you can see we only see the elements which phases were set to existing in the first place. And for example, if I switch, let's say I remove the demolition, I've set to this wall, and I switch it back to new, the wall is gone because the phase that is set to the view is existing. And you cannot never see future elements that are created after the phase in Revit, regardless of the phase filter you'll be using. All right, so we quickly showed how to modify the phase of an element and how to use the demolition by switching the tool to phase demolish and set it to new and not to a demolition phase. And now we're going to talk about the phase filter, which is the main way to control the graphics of the phases in Revit. So let's say I'll be switching this to new once again. So in the new view, usually you would see both the existing and the new, but probably not the demolished elements. Anyway, we're gonna go to the phases tool here, but then I'm going to go to phase filters. And you can see all the filters named that are usually created by default. I'll create a new one just for fun. It's gonna be called, why not RP Live? And there are 4 states of elements in Revit. New, existing, demolish, and temporary. New is considered as an element created in current phase and not demolished. Existing is an element created in previous phase and not demolished. Demolish means an element created in a previous phase and demolished in the current phase. And temporary is an element created in current phase and demolished in current phase. So temporary isn't used very often, but it would be for temporary walls, for example, during the construction. And so you see that each of these states of elements are represented in a column with all the filters. And then you have 3 options. You have by category, not displayed, and overridden. By category means that all the default setting will be used for that element. Not displayed is pretty self-explanatory. The element will be made invisible, and overridden means that you will set special graphics for that element. So let me jump in and play around with the phase filter for a little bit. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Open the wrong Revit. Okay, so I have my RP Live here. Let's do a quick test. I'm going to set existing to not displayed, demolish, not displayed, temporary, not displayed. And that's done, but I still need to switch the phase filter of the view to the new one I created, which is RP Live. So setting RP Live here. And you can see that the existing wall, so if I take a look at this wall, the phase created is new. If I was to switch it to existing, you see the wall is gone. So I'm going to switch it back to new because all the existing elements have been hidden in this specific view type. Although to be clear, that kind of phase filter isn't really useful. Usually you want to show existing elements, right? So now let's try to have demolished elements. Let's say I demolish this wall. You can see now that the wall is gone for a moment. Let's bring back the demolished elements. I'm going back to the phase filter menu. And our RP Live phase filter on demolished, I'm going to switch this from not displayed to overridden. Let's see what happens first. And you can see that the wall appears in dashed lines. And why does it appear in dashed line? It's because I've set it on the phase filter to overridden. Then we'll see in a moment what it means. But if I was to set it to by category means just show it normally. Don't do any overrides to it. Just use the default settings of the view. There you go. So the wall, this demolished walls, although it is demolished, it is a new view. So this phase filter doesn't make much sense, but it is to show what you can do with it. The wall appeared completely normally. So let's go back to the phases menu. face filter. I'm going to switch this back, Demolished, to overridden, because it's much more interesting like this. And I'll also use the existing to overridden as well. You can see for the moment what happens is that our demolished wall appears in dashed lines. And as you can see, the existing wall appear with a gray line for the outlines. So that works, that's well enough. But in most projects, at least from my experience, clients like it when the existing walls appear with a gray fill pattern. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going back to the Faces menu, and this time I'm going to Graphic Overrides. Just take a look at the PDF. So once again, and for those who've just joined in, go to revitpure.com/live. You can download the show notes and follow along if you want. But these are the graphic overrides. I'm going to show you the menu. So the graphic overrides menu looks just like that. You can modify the lines, the projected lines and patterns, and the cut lines and pattern as well. And let's say we want a solid fill gray pattern for the existing walls. I'm going to click on pattern here, and you see it's on the cut category. Clicking here, and you can see the foreground has been set to be invisible. I don't like that. I'm going to turn it back on. The background pattern, I'm going to use solid fill and switch the color to dark gray like this. And you know what? I actually prefer to have a normal line. So I want to remove this override that I've set. So I'm going to simply click on clear overrides. Same thing for the projection lines like this. And I'm going to click on apply. And there you go. So already pretty useful for existing buildings, renovation projects, when you want to see all your existing wall with a pattern. And you can see if I select my wall here, and I switch the phase created to existing, the wall will suddenly appear to be gray, like all the other existing walls. Something to take into consideration, if I duplicate the view here, if I play along with some of the phase filter, let me try something. If I use the phase filter show complete, for example, and basically in this one, you can see that there's no overridden settings, graphics for the existing elements. If I go back to the phases menu and I look at show complete, you can see that existing is by category. It's not overridden. So that's why in this view, the existing elements appear without a solid dark pattern. But if I switch to my previous view that uses the phase filter RP Live, the existing wall do appear with a gray pattern. Okay, so these are kind of the basics. I guess if you played around with faces, that's the kind of thing you should usually know. So we're still in the beginner stuff here. So if some of you think, wow, this is really beginner stuff, don't worry, we'll cover some more intermediate to advanced tools that are on. Somebody, Farzad, asks, anybody found the PDF? Just want to make sure everybody have the link, revitpure.com/live, and you can see the text here. Click here. Click here to download the show notes PDF. So if anyone else has issues finding this, let me know. Karen K asks, is this being recorded for us to watch later? Yes, it is. Yep, absolutely. Okay, now we're jumping to really interesting stuff, especially since the new, well, it's not new anymore, right? 2022 is at corner, but since 2019, the double patterns feature, which really helped to manage phases in Revit. It's super helpful feature because there used to be just a single pattern in Revit. And now they split it into the foreground pattern and the background pattern, which really simplifies a lot of stuff for us. Because the way to do it, if you wanted, like, for example, a brick wall that shows the brick pattern, but you also wanted to have a solid dark pattern, you needed to create an additional region. Just seeing the question, Oscar Selfa says, I think it's the PDF, is the email. Just wanted to be clear about this. If you go to revitpure.com/live, there's two links. One is for the pamphlet, but the second line here, click here to download the show notes PDF. There's an error in the URL. Enter your web browser. Please check the URL and try again. Did you type in revitpure.com/live? For me, there's an error. Oh, interesting. Maybe I can put the link here. Can you guys try that link? That's why. It seems to be working for me. Anyway, back to the double patterns. Let me know if the link I've put in the chat works for you guys. Okay, so what is so great about this double pattern feature is, let's say I want to show a brick wall. So I'm going to switch this generic type. I'm going to switch it to a brick wall like this. There we go. And this is a brick wall. In previous version of Revit, if you wanted to override this, you would lose all the materials hatches, well, patterns, like the diagonal lines you see for the brick, they would be gone, which is a shame and caused a lot of problem. And let's say I put this to existing. You can see for the moment it appears in solid gray. Well, that's another topic I'll talk about as well. I'll just jump to that. Watch out with material overrides. So in addition to overriding the patterns and the lines in the Revit Pure, in the Revit Phases menu, you can also override the material. But the problem with this is if you will have a wall assembly like this with multiple layers, all materials will be merged into one, like on the image on the right, to use the material you've set in this an override. So in this case, that's not helpful at all, because I still want to see all the layers of the wall. So I'm going to go to graphic overrides in existing. I'm going to click here. Right now we can see there's a material set. I'm going to click here on this button to put no material. So the material is gone. And let's see what happens. We have all of our layers of the wall, including the diagonal lines for the brick and all the interior layers for membrane, insulation, and everything else. So something I would recommend to you is to always put the solid dark pattern in the background and keep the foreground for the patterns of your actual materials, like diagonal lines for brick, or the small dots for gypsum, for example. So it seems there's a few people saying that the link doesn't work. Well, don't worry, guys. After the show, I'll make sure to put the correct link in the description. Okay, so that's, if I go to this brick wall, let me take a look at the structure. I'm going to the brick. So you can see that the cut pattern of the brick is set to the foreground. So that's super important that your materials are set this way. Because if you, for example, I'll switch it. Let's say I put the brick material in the background like this, and I remove the pattern for the foreground. You can see what happens. The pattern for the brick is gone because the background pattern override we set in the phases has priority over the diagonal lines. So I'm going to go back here in my wall composition and set it back to the foreground and remove this background one. Just select no pattern here. There we go. All right, so we've went to this. We've went to the double pattern. We saw how to create a new wall like this, an existing wall where you can have two patterns at once. Elizabeth asks, which version of Revit was this added? It's Revit 2019. Watch out, material overrides. Yeah, I've just talked about that. The pattern priority. So you can see there's basically 3 settings that can affect the patterns of your element. There is the element material, basically what we've set in the brick in the wall composition, that has its own pattern. Then there's the phase material override, and there's the phase pattern override. So that might get confusing. You have some notes about how it works in this PDF presentation. But basically, in the phase material override, the background solid fill is never used, but the foreground fill can actually be used. So for example, I'm going to go back here. Just for the test, I'm going to put back the material, which was phase existing. And if you remember, this basically merge all the materials together. So not always good to have this setting. But still, if I go back to it, and this time on the foreground cut pattern, I'm going to set something. I'm going to, let's say, use these aluminum lines with a flashy color, like blue, like this. Well, the override does work. So you can see it can kind of get confusing because you have the pattern from the wall materials. You have potentially the pattern from the graphic overrides that are here, but the override materials also contain patterns. So to reiterate, the background here doesn't have any effect, but the foreground can have an effect. But it's usually not a good practice to keep a pattern on the override material for phases. So I'm just going to select back no pattern here. Okay. So what would you use the phase material override for? Something that it does use is if I go to a 3D view, for example. So I have my wall, which is right here. And I'm going to use the RP Live setting, the RP Live phase filter. And now we're going to experiment with the materials, the material override. So I'm going back to the phases menu, to graphic overrides, to the existing material. And here I'm going to modify the shading color. So I'll be clicking on this and using, let's say, green like this. And you can see that the wall appears to be green. So that was set in the material overrides. However, that only has an effect in shaded views. If I was to switch back to hidden lines, the color I've set in the material overrides doesn't have any effect. So this is just in consistent color mode and shaded color mode. And obviously, in addition to a material and the cut pattern, you can also always set a projection pattern. Let's say I'm going to set a foreground. No, I'm going to make it the background actually. Let's say I'll use some sort of diagonal hatch like this, yellow on the background, like this for the existing elements patterns. So you can see this in the shaded views, we both have the green override as well as the cross hatch yellow lines. But if I switch to hidden lines, the color is gone, the green color, but the pattern is still visible. So there's you can see there's a lot of little subtleties here with the materials overrides and the patterns override. So just be careful with that. All right, we talked about that already. Okay, we're going to jump into something else. We're going to talk about some strange behavior that Revit has when it comes to demolishing walls and windows. So let's say I create a door here. So I'll make sure everything is in the same phase. You can see the phase created for this wall is existing. So I'm also going to set this door to existing. So you can see the overrides are not only for walls, by the way. I've been using this wall since the beginning, but they affect all elements, including doors like this. So you have a pattern on your door, which doesn't make much sense. I'll actually set something that makes sense for this wall. Going back to graphic overrides, and I'm going to switch, instead of using this, I'm going to set the solid fill dark, but a little lighter than what I've set to the cut pattern, like this. And I'm going to remove the material override. There you go. So that's, is this a brick wall? Oh yeah, the brick is on the other side. Let me flip the wall like this. So already, if you've been using Revit prior to 2019, just doing this wasn't possible. And what I mean by that is having a brick wall, existing brick wall that also has a color over it. So let me go to an elevation view. I'm going to create an elevation here. Just make sure to use the RP Live. So you can see what happens to our, let me copy this next to it. So you can see this is an existing element and this is a new element. And it's the same material with the phase filter. There's a dark, a solid fill that goes below the brick pattern. Again, something you couldn't do before 2019. The way you used to do it, and if anybody using old versions of Revit, you kind of had to do manual regions like this and use a solid gray color. Do we have a solid gray in this one? Yeah, this one. You had to manually draw that. Yuck, that's not BIM at all, right? A bad way to do it. Okay, so anyway, what I wanted to talk about, let me just take a little sip here. I hope everybody's enjoying the show, by the way. Don't hesitate if you have any other question. I hope I didn't go too fast. If it's the case, well, have a look at the notes, or you can always rewind. All right. Yeah, what I wanted to talk about is if you demolish this door. So let's say this is an existing wall, this is an existing door, but I want to demolish this door. Phase demolished, I'm going to switch it to new here. So remember, if you want to demolish element, you demolish it in the new phase. And so let's say in this case, I don't want to see demolished elements. I'm going back to the phases menu. Right here. In the RP Live, I'm going to demolish instead of overridden. I'm going to select not displayed. I don't want to see demolished elements in this view. There you go. And what happens is when a door or a window or any openings really in a wall is demolished, Revit will automatically create an infilling elements like this. So I didn't create this by myself. This is automatic. So Revit assumes that when you demolish a window or a door, you want to use the same wall composition to fill out the rest of the wall, which isn't always the case, right? So going back to the PDF. So these automatic infilling elements are quite weird. If you select them, first you can see there's no phase, there's no top constraint, there's no bottom constraint. Basically, you cannot change the position of this element. If you try, you'll get a warning. So you can modify, you can change the wall type though. That's one of the only thing you can do. And if you try to delete it, let's say you think, you know what, this is garbage. I don't want to fill out this wall. Try to delete it. You get this warning. Can delete infilling element without deleting its insert or host, which means the door you've created will also be deleted. I'll try it for fun. So I click on delete and now you're like, oh my God, my door is gone. Yeah, and by the way, I've worked on projects where doors have actually been deleted by somebody who tried to delete the infilling elements. So be careful with that. But again, you cannot move this. If you try to move it like this, it says, I don't like that. I'm putting it back into its initial position. Okay, what you can do though is to change the type like this. So I've changed to a generic type. And before changing the type, you might want to change the location line. Let's say if you want it to align to the exterior, I'm going to select finish face exterior and switch it like this. So you have a small wall is aligned to the exterior side of the wall. Okay, but the problem I face many times is that we don't really want to have this element. But as you saw, you cannot delete it. So what is the trick? Well, I'm going to show you what is the trick. Let's say I delete this and also delete the element. I'm going to start all over again. So what you actually need to do is to create a second wall. Let's say I will modify my wall profile like this. Like this, and I will create a small wall that I will put inside of it. This is generic. And so I will align it like this, hit spacebar to flip it. And I use the align tool. And now, so I don't want it to merge, I'm going to set the face demolished to new here. And now you can see it disappears. And if you want to avoid this issue, you can switch the phase of the view to existing instead. So you can temporarily work with it and position it. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to put the door inside this little element. So you can see it goes above it. So I'm going to play around with it. So there you go. So this wall, you don't want to demolish it. So you keep it as is. It's face created existing, demolished none. But then this wall, which contains the door, all of it, you want to demolish it. So face demolished, new, face created existing. Just like this. And if I switch the phase of the view to new, you can see what happens. I now have a regular hole and I can do whatever I want with it. You know, I can fill it out with any wall or do whatever I want. So that solves the annoying and filling elements that sometimes you don't want to have. But if I go back to this view, well, maybe you want to be even more precise. And I use the edit profile. No, not edit profile actually. I will use the align tool and align the wall to the door like this. Don't forget to use tab to toggle through multiple selection elements. Okay. There we go. Javier asks, what if you change the wall type of the infill wall to a current wall type that has all empty panels? Yeah, that's an interesting point. I never thought of that. I could have tried it. So the question by Javier is, let's say I create a new door here, setting to existing, demolish new, and I'll switch the view to new. And you can see there's my infilling elements. Yeah, let's try an empty curtain wall. So I could switch the panel. I unpin the panel, and if you create the curtain wall, you always have the option empty system panel. Huh. Yeah, so that's really interesting. Thanks, Javier. I didn't think of it. I guess then it means that you also have a kind of a curtain wall to manage that is kind of hidden somewhere in there. Maybe it's not a big deal, but you have to be careful about that, I guess. But pretty good idea. That's why I like doing these live sessions. People in the comments always have good ideas. Okay, so that's for infilling elements. Okay, talk about that. Okay, managing floors and ceiling phases. So this will be interesting if some of you are doing architecture work and renovation projects where you need to demolish the ceilings, you need to demolish the floor finishes, ceramics and wood, and you have issues with that. I'll show you a few tricks with it. Let me jump back to the PDF. Yeah, first, let's talk about floors. So an issue with floor is if I go back to my level 1 view and I will set this floor to existing. So you can see that my floor appears with a solid gray fill. Just having a glance at the comments, sorry. Yes, solid gray fill, but maybe you don't want to see this. But as you might have noticed, the graphic overrides of Revit, there's no categories. There's no settings specifically for walls. There's no settings specifically for ceilings. That would be cool to have though, right? But it's not available. Which means that the effect I have here, that I set a projection pattern for all my elements, it's also affecting my floors. And let's say I don't want it to affect my floors. Well, the only way you can solve it is to create a view filter. So I'm opening the VG menu by hitting shortcut VG, going to the filters, clicking on edit new here. We'll be clicking on new. Sorry, all the windows pop up on my other screen. I'll call it floors. And usually I like to add stairs when I create such a filter. So I'm adding floors. I am adding stairs. And for the moment, there's no additional constraints. If you wanted, you could specify specific floors and stairs. Maybe some of them you want them to appear with the gray. Some of them you don't want to. There you go. So I'm adding floors and stairs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going on the projection surface pattern, going to click here, and I'm going to uncheck the visible background pattern, just like this. So now, do I have an example? Okay, so something with filters is that they are specific to a view, which means you would have to manage view templates to assign them quickly. It would be cool to be able to quickly copy and paste filters with all their effects. But anyway, so I'm going to add the floors and stair again in this 3D view and also remove the background visible pattern. And you can see that my walls do indeed have a solid gray pattern fill for the surface, but not the floors. So that's the way you would do it, by using view filters. There you go. Something else that you guys might have an issue with is the demolished ceilings. So in this image, for example, we have an existing ceiling that we want to demolish. And in the bottom, this is a demolition view. But the issue you might have, what if you want to show the grid lines of the ceiling with dashed lines? Well, that's impossible by default because it's a specific pattern. But there's a workaround that you can use. But you need to create a demolished pattern. And I'll show how to create the patterns. There's a great plugin that you can use, which is called PyRevit. I've talked about this plugin a lot on my blog. Because it's amazing, it's free. I don't remember if I put a link, but anyway, and I've created a special URL with how to create a field pattern. It's in the PDF. Oh, actually, I can click it. There you go. So if you want to know how to do it, you have all the details here. But meanwhile, I'm going back to my project, and to create a pattern I'm going to use a drafting view. I'll create a pattern. So a drafting view in Revit is just a 2D view. It's basically like the AutoCAD mode. And first, I'm just going to go to a ceiling view and to have a look at what ceiling I have, what the dimensions are, the grid. So the grid seems to be 610 by 1220. So going back to this view, so 610 and 1220, like this. So I just drew this. So I'm going to show you how to create a pattern, ceiling pattern. So not demolition yet. No worry, we'll cover that just after. So I'm going to the Revit tab here by selecting the two lines, clicking on Make Pattern. Enter a new pattern name. So I'll call it RP Live Ceiling. It's a model pattern. Anytime you represent real dimensions of geometry, always use a model. I'm going to check create fill region, and I'm going to click on create pattern. And as you can see, I've only selected the top line and the right side line, else you would kind of duplicate the lines and that would be useless. So I click on create pattern, and then I select the bottom left corner and the top right corner like this, and it says congratulations, your pattern has been created. Now I'm creating a region. Having a look at the options, I do have my RP Live Ceiling here. There you go. And I have a regular ceiling, but I don't want to create a regular ceiling, right? So I'm going to duplicate this. And now I'm going to manually draw dashed lines. So let's say I want the line to be, let's say about 160. I'm just going to create, to modify the extent of this one. 162, just like this. So I guess I could be super precise if I would normally do it, but I'll just do it quickly, just for the sake of the show. Just move this like this. There you go. So I will select all these small fragments, go back to Revit, click on Make Pattern, and this time I'm going to call it RP Live Ceiling Demo. And again, I will create a fill region, click on Create Pattern, click on the bottom left corner, top right corner, and it says that it's been done. Before using it on my material, I will test it. Copy and paste this. And switch it to RP Live Demo. There you go. I have my demolished ceiling pattern. How cool is that? And I think the first time I did a pattern like this, I used the text editor. You know, that was before I knew about Revit. And if anyone has ever created a pattern like this, you have to type in values to represent each dash. It's super long. It took me hours. I mean, why use that when you have Revit, right? Okay, so I'm going back here. The thing about this, though, is that I'll need to create a different ceiling type. So I'm going to duplicate this and call it demo, because you cannot have the same type using different patterns for the ceiling, right? And I'll also need to create a new material. So going here, we duplicate this one and call it demo. And I will switch this pattern to live ceiling demo instead. And there you go. I have a demolished pattern. However, you should know that this ceiling will have this pattern regardless of the phases. So it's not a super BIM way, which means because the pattern isn't automatically set with the phases, you kind of have to set the type manually. But it works. So phase created for this one is going to be existing, and phase demolished, new. And actually, I think I didn't show it, but I'm going to create a demolition view, just renaming this view. And usually the default phase filter you would use for a demolition view is show previous plus demo. There you go. So that's for a plan view. This one, again, I will use show previous plus demo. And now I have my ceiling, demolished ceiling here with the demolished pattern. If I switch to show complete, for example, the ceiling is gone. And I could replace it with a new ceiling with regular lines. So I hope that's helpful to you guys. It was certainly to us in architecture projects, renovation projects. Yes, many ask, what kind of headphones are you using? It's Sennheiser Game Zero, if I'm not mistaken. I've been asked this question a few times, actually, so I think I'll end up putting the link in the description. Okay, it's 3:50. We don't have that much to cover. Like the main topics have been done. Just a few more things, a few more tips. Having a look at the questions. Diane asks, what if there were light fixtures in the ceiling? That's a good question. Do I have... Let me... Okay, so let's say this is an existing view, and I will insert fixture family. I hope I can find a good one. Anything interesting? Rectangle, downlight. I never know which type to use. Oh, I'll use this one. Where is it? Okay, that was the wrong family. So I'll try another family. Truffer light, is that right? Let's try this one. Oh, there you go. Okay, so that's for demolition of these lighting fixtures. Well, it's the same thing with the phases, phase created existing. If you keep it like this, and let's say I go to the new, the fixture will still be there. So obviously you need to make sure that the fixture is also demolished. And if I go to an existing view, the fixture doesn't seems to show with dash lines though. Probably because it's a surface element. Let me have a look at the phase graphic override. Oh, sorry, I was forgetting to put back the screen on. I was talking all by myself. So yeah, basically what I've done is to insert this lighting family inside the project. And you have to make sure that the phase demolish is also set to new. But as we can see, by default, the lines are still solid. They're not dashed. So I will have a look at the phases graphics overrides here. And the phases, it seems to be a dashed line. So is it the problem with the scale? And maybe it's just the way that the family is done. You know, it usually works well with a wall. So I would have to play with a little bit with the family if I want it to be appear with dashed lines. Okay. Groups and phases. Okay, groups with phases, it's pretty tricky. So be careful with that. I'm going to show it quickly. Let's say I go to level 1 view. Let me create a group of elements here. Okay, let's say I put all of this in existing. Create group, so I'll call this RP Live. So if I edit my group, you can see here, everything is set, phase created to existing. Just for fun, I could set this one to new and see what happens. But if I copy and paste this, the phases don't switch over to the new group. So it's a group. The elements are supposed to be the same, right? But not for phases, because this one phase created existing, and this one phase created new. So it basically just takes the phase, the new elements take the phase that you're currently on. So the phase of this view is new. So if I wanted this group to be new, I would have to switch it. And now if I copy the group, it is gonna stay like this. And interesting, yeah. The demolition doesn't carry over though. So the phase information doesn't carry from a group to another. So that's why you have to be careful with groups and options. It can be kind of tricky. Can you do in Revit link phasing map? Yeah, sure. I was going to talk just about that, I think. Yeah, there you go. Phase mapping with Revit link. For phases to properly work between link models, you have to map them together. In the example below, we go to type properties or Revit link. In the phase mapping menu, we'll make sure the phases match. So I will insert the Revit link. Do I use this one? Why not? So is there anything? Yeah, it's basically the same model. Okay, so I have just inserted a link. And when you want to make sure the phases from the Revit models talk together and they're the same thing, you have to select their link. Here I selected the link. I click on edit type. And here I have phase mapping. So go to phase mapping, click on edit. And yeah, with this one, it's pretty simple. There's just two phases, just existing and new, and they're already matching. So I will try something else, something that is a little more tricky. Let me quickly create a new project. This is a French template. And I will just mess up with the phases. So I will create a bunch of phases like this. And sometimes you have it. Some people use existing construction as the name of the phase. Some people use new construction as the name of the phase. So, and that might mess up your settings. Let's see, I just create a bunch of walls in here. There you go. Okay, so I save this on the desktop, project number 3, that's fine. So close this. Okay, so I'm back to my project. I will once again insert it, link Revit. Okay, so I have the project I've just created, going back to edit type, going to phase mapping. And now you can see that that's where it gets kind of tricky. So I have to match. So this is my project and this is the link project. So you have to match, let's say existing is existing construction, but if your link has multiple phases, more phases than your main project, you might run into some problems. So avoid that. You should always have the same phases, some phases name ideally. So in this case, you have all this list. Let's say I think new matches with phases 1 for my link project. But anyway, that's a case where if you collaborate with engineers or any other consultant, in your BIM execution plan, you should be talking about phases and how to name them properly so you don't run into these kind of issues where you have different number of phases in different models. Okay, parts in Revit, avoid. So you might be tempted if you demolish just the brick, for example, of a wall, but you want to keep the rest and to use the parts tool. So I have this, let's say I create a new brick wall. Let's say I want to demolish only the brick wall for this. Let me set it to new. I could, actually I'll set it to existing. You could use the parts tool, which is right here. And then it's turned this element into multiple parts. You can select all the layers of the walls. This is basically made for general contractors, not really for architects, although some architects do like to use it. And in theory, it's quite cool because phases here, phases demolished by original, you can uncheck it and switch to phase demolish new, for example. and it would, if I go to a complete view, the brick is gone. It has been demolished. The reason I'm not a big fan of this strategy is that parts like this can be a little messed up. Like you have this setting here in the views, part visibility, show parts, and you can use the show original settings. If you use this setting, the brick is back, okay? Even though it is demolished, and it should not be appearing like this. So it's a useful feature in theory, but the way you should do it, it's a little dumb, but I think it's pretty much the only way. What is the thickness of this? 89, okay. So I would just duplicate this wall composition, duplicate it, and this one I'll call it without brick. And I will remove the brick. And I will create a new composition with just a brick. Actually, let me use this one. And so this one, I'll just call it brick, and I move this down here, and I delete all the other layers. There you go. Then I can use the align tool to adjust the extent. You can move the position like this. By default, you have a super thick lines here. You can use the join tool like this to remove this and create the thin line instead. And then I select just the brick and set the face demolished to new. In this view, it's gone. If I put a demolition view, show all, okay. Yeah, it's been a temporary existing. Okay, yeah, there we go. So this is demolition view. You can view here my existing wall. So I keep the rest of the wall composition, but I do demolish the brick. If I go to 3D view, for example, and I've set it to show previous plus demo. You can see that by default I do have an override material and that's using transparency, so that's why this brick appears to be kind of transparent. Okay, so that's for demolishing just a part of a wall. Create separate wall for finished demo. Yeah, that's just what I've said. Okay, almost done here. Rooms are only visible in a single phase. Yeah, that's kind of an issue with rooms. Rooms also have phases. Let me create a bunch of walls here. Like this. Creating a bunch of walls. So what's going on? Oh yeah, just need to adjust the settings of the view. I'll set it to existing. Okay, now I can create my walls. And let's say, so now I'm in the existing phase. So if I create a new room, the rooms will be set, if I select my room here, to existing. But check this out, this is grayed out. I cannot change the face of the room. So it's there forever. If I want to modify the face, I need to delete the room and set it back to a view where the face is correctly set. And you cannot demolish rooms. That's their rooms are special elements when it comes to phases. And if I go to new, the rooms are gone. So rooms are phase specific. So which means I need to create brand new rooms for the new. So let's say is this, yeah, that's existing. So I can use my RP Live setting. Okay. And if I go back here, I'm going to go back to the existing view. And so let's say this is a saloon and this is a kitchen, whatever. And I go back to my new view. Well, obviously the rooms, the name don't carry on. And another annoying feature of this is if I demolish this wall, for example, well, the rooms now have the same extent, but usually when you have a demolition plan, uh, it shows the room, it shows the new room. But if you're a demolished plan, usually you probably want to use the old rooms. So that's an issue because you cannot show the room tags from the existing phase. So there's no easy workaround with this. I know some people create a view with just the room tags and they put it over the demolition view, which is a pretty dumb way to work, but I don't think there's a smart alternatives. So last page. I'm done with this, guys. The project browser with phases. What I would recommend is that you create a view family, a view type for each phase in renovations projects. Like this, I would have floor plan existing, floor plan demolition, and floor plan new. This is based on what I've done with a client's template. So this is my client's template, and he does renovations of houses. And I've made this for him: floor plan existing, floor plan demolition, floor plan new. And obviously each view has a view template with the phases. You can see the phase filter is set to show previous plus demo here, which is the setting you normally use for demolition. So I would say that's pretty hit. I went through the whole thing and I'm just 8 minutes late. That isn't too bad. So I'm now happy to answer your questions. Will this be recorded for replay? Yes, it will be. It's on YouTube, so everything is always recorded. So just making sure I didn't miss any big questions. Thomas Hardy says, on a lot of residential projects, all existing windows get replaced with new windows in the same opening, but Revit doesn't always like that unless the new windows are slightly different size. Yeah, well, that's why I recommend using creating a different wall that is demolished, the hosting wall. And then I would create a new wall that matched the new window as well. So that's kind of messing around a little bit, but that really helps. And I think it should solve that issue. Phasing and design option. Didn't have time to explore that too much. Maybe I will do a show on design options at some point. I often use phases as a quick way of showing options. Have you ever tried this? Not really, no. Eric B says, do you have a strategy for existing to be reused in another location? Yeah, if you have a renovation project, sometimes you have a project you've already made, you can use it as a linked model. The thing is, if you demolish part of it, you have to bring it to the new model. So I would keep the existing in a separate model, but except the parts which will be modified, which you should bring back to your new project. I guess symbolic clients and families do not respond to the phase filter right setting. Yeah, that's right. Can you create the frame from the grid and ceiling instead of having it as a solid object? The frame from the grid and ceiling. Yeah, that's the frame of the grid and ceiling. I'm not sure I understand the question. Are those templates available? Well, the specific templates I made for my client isn't available, but again, I'll quickly show. If you go to revitpure.com/template, the template I've been using during the show, you can find it here. It's pretty cheap. Well, at least I think it's $99, and it goes all the way back to Revit 2017. What if you have rooms with boundaries in different phases? So boundaries in different phases. Well, it doesn't work that way. I mean, if you have an existing room, obviously it won't recognize the new elements. And if you have a new room, if the walls are not demolished, it will recognize them. And but it won't recognize the demolished elements. Can you etch the new wall for new construction phase instead of the existing? I tried following your steps and it doesn't work for the new phase. Yes, Catherine Ferrari asks. Oh, cool name, Ferrari. I will show you. Okay, back to my project. So as you can see right now, I have my existing wall that show like this, but if I create a new wall, let me use the RP live setting. There you go. The new walls appear white like this, but the existing ones appear with a solid dark fill. So I'm going to create a new face filter that basically reverses this. Going to graphic overrides, no, face filter. I'm going to call it Catherine Ferrari. New, I'm going to select new is going to be overridden, and existing is going to be by category. And demolish, displayed, temporary, not displayed, and graphics override. I just need to put the same thing here. So I'll start by clearing these overrides. They're not required. There you go. And then I'm going to put my solid fill pattern for background. Let's I should get funky with the color. Deep ruby, isn't that the Ferrari color? There you go. And now I just need to switch the face filter here to Catherine. And it actually appears to be dark. But at least it works for the existing element. So this is an existing element. You see now it appears to be white, while the new elements appear with a solid dark fill. I'm not sure why it's dark though. Let me just have a look. Oh, it's probably because of this. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. As I've mentioned, the foreground pattern of the override material can cause problem with this. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Click here to remove the phase override material. Click OK. There you go. And now you have your Ferrari red for the new walls, and the existing walls appear like this. And if I switch back to RP Live, the existing walls appear dark and the new ones are white. If I switch back to Catherine's face filter, that's the opposite. So I think that's pretty much it for the questions. So a big thank you for you guys to be joining the show. So once again, if you enjoyed the show, if you enjoy Revit Pure Live, if you enjoy the blog post, and if you enjoy the pamphlets, you can always support the show by buying a learning package, basic learning package, get the template, get the design learning package. It helps the show a great deal, and it will also help you, of course. Well, I hope at least. And that's it for today. Thanks to everybody. So don't forget, next week, no Revit Pure Live show, but I will be doing a webinar with Enscape and CG Architect. And tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. we will be with the Revit Kid on his AMA show. So thanks everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.